Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA. I'm Subhash Chandra.
And I'm Hemkor Saran. On the show today, as Antony Blinken wrapped up his 9th visit to West Asia, he has urged Hamas to follow suit after Israel agreed to a bridging proposal, also saying that Washington does not support the long-term occupation of Gaza. And Blinken warned that time is of the essence for a truce deal. We'll get you all the updates in a few minutes from now.
Also on World DNA, it's the second night of the Democratic National Convention where all eyes will be on the Obamas. Obama posted on social media that his convention address will lay out what's at stake and why Harris and her running mate Tim Walz should be our next president and vice president. We will get you the latest on that front as well. Let's start with the headlines.
Second night of the Democratic National Convention underway in Chicago. Former President Barack Obama to throw his support behind Kamala Harris's White House bid. List of speakers includes former First Lady Michelle Obama.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken leaves Doha after meeting the mediators in ceasefire mission, says the US is trying to send necessary messages to Iran to avoid escalation in West Asia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin visits Chechnya for the first time since 2011 with Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov inspecting troops and volunteers ready to fight Ukraine.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to embark on his visit to Poland today. First Indian Prime Minister to visit the European country in last 45 years, slated to visit Ukraine next on the 23rd of August.
Kolkata police suspends 2 assistant police commissioners and a police inspector in connection with vandalism at RG Medical College after the rape and murder of a trainee doctor. Department inquiry initiated against them.
Search continues for 6 missing people who've been missing after a super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily. British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and Morgan Stanley International chairman Jonathan Bloomer among those missing.
Shares of Trump media sinks to record lows on Tuesday. The stock is on track for an 8th consecutive session of losses. This follows the Republican presidential candidate's recent return to rival social media platform X.
World number 1 Yannick Sinner has been cleared of wrongdoing after twice testing positive for a banned substance in March. The Italian will lose ranking points and prize money from his semi-final run at Indian Wells, but will face no further sanction. Former US President Barack Obama will take the stage on day 2 of the Democratic National Convention to boost his longtime ally Kamala Harris in her presidential bid against Donald Trump.
Obama will be preceded by his wife Michelle Obama, who tops Democrats' wish list as a future president. The list of speakers on day 2 of the convention includes Senator Bernie Sanders, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Harris's husband Douglas Emhoff.
Obama's DNC address will come full circle for the former U.S. president. He returns to the convention dais 20 years after his first appearance in 2004. Then Illinois Senator Barack Obama delivered a keynote address at the convention in Boston. 4 years later, he went on to become America's first black president.
Obama's backing for Harris comes at a critical juncture as Democrat supporters look to make history again, with the country getting its first woman and first black and South Asian president.
Former Trump White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham made an appearance at the convention. She told the crowd she used to be a true believer who spent holidays with the Trump family, but now she's backing Harris.
Because unlike my boss, I saw him when the cameras were off. Behind closed doors, Trump mocks his supporters. He calls them basement dwellers.
Grandsons of former presidents Jimmy Carter and John F. Kennedy cast Vice President Harris in the same image as their famous family members.
And navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis. For my grandfather, it was never about fame, recognition, accolades, or awards. His legacy is measured by the lives he has touched and the good he has done. Kamala Harris carries my grandfather's legacy. She knows what is right, and she fights for it.
Asked to a new generation, to a leader who shares my grandfather's energy, vision, and optimism for our future. That leader is Vice President Kamala Harris.
Harris's election effort has raised around $500 million, a Reuters report said, quoting sources. The U.S. Vice President entered the fray after President Joe Biden stepped aside from the top of the Democratic ticket, unleashing floods of funding that had dried up in the weeks after Biden's disastrous debate against Trump.
Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump attacked Kamala Harris' record on crime and safety in a rally in Michigan. Trump, however, faced criticism for holding the event in a town where white supremacists had held a rally just a month ago. His running mate, J.D. Vance, made a stop in Kenosha, Wisconsin to laud Donald Trump's law enforcement policies. Vance also said Democratic leadership was responsible for violent crime in cities like Chicago, currently hosting the Democratic National Convention.
And my little theory about why they decided to have the convention in Chicago is, Tim Walz has been going around saying that he served in war. And maybe they did it in Chicago so that he could actually accurately say that he visited a combat zone.
Meanwhile, independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is considering ending his campaign to join forces with Republican rival Donald Trump. Kennedy's running mate has said. Nicole Shanahan said that as independents, she and Kennedy ran the risk of drawing support from would-be Trump voters and clearing the way for Democrats Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to win the November election. And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, give us the latest from the Democratic National Convention. It's day 2. All eyes are now on the Obamas. What can we expect?
They really are on the Obamas, aren't they? Despite the fact that there were numerous other speakers, as you mentioned, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, and we're expected to hear from Doug Emhoff, who is Kamala Harris's husband as well. But the Obamas are known to give very inspiring speeches. Michelle Obama has spoken in the last 4 Democratic conventions, and her speeches are notably memorable. Former President Barack Obama is expected to talk about Kamala Harris's qualifications and touch on the day's theme. Each day, of course, has a theme. Today's was a bold vision for America's future. We're also being told that they have arrived at the convention and that they're going over each other's notes and giving each other suggestions and sort of working on what each individual is expected to say. Of course, those speeches are already prepared, but just some finishing touches regarding that.
Susan, now Obama's former campaign manager and alumni from Obama's 2008 and 2012 election efforts, they are part of Harris' campaign as of now. Is there an Obama imprint on Kamala Harris' campaign for the presidential bid?
Yeah, I would definitely even go further than that and say that Barack Obama is definitely one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. He continues to be calling the shots behind the scene. As you mentioned, it's not just the campaign people, but a lot of other advisors that were for President Barack Obama are now in the Harris camp. They're advising her and giving her strategies to move forward. It's really known that it's Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and possibly Chuck Schumer as well, who were the ones behind the push to get President Biden out of the race because of his old age and bad poll numbers and insert Harris, despite the fact that President Biden said that he did it voluntarily. But, you know, you can't just not take that into consideration that Obama really has a lot of say in the direction that the Democrat Party is moving towards as well.
Right. In fact, Susan, it's interesting that you say that he is one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, because I was just going to come to this next. It's been about 8 years since Obama was president. He still is a very influential figure in the Democratic camp. So what kind of an impact does he have on the Democratic camp, and can he really energize voters to unite behind Harris and Walz?
In what capacity does he influence everyone?
Right.
You know, what is his position in the Democratic camp? Because clearly he is an influential voice. That's what we were discussing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what happens during these campaigns, as you guys well know, we've covered the previous ones as well. A lot of it is public perception, and at least among the Democrats, I wouldn't say independent voters, but among the Democratic Party, Barack Obama continues to be that rock star of a former president. It's his mannerism, the way he talks, the way he connects with the audience, and his delivery has always been praised, and it's also always been noteworthy. And then you have him being the husband of Michelle Obama, who's just a very popular figure in the Democratic Party. She's known to be not only favored among Democrats in general, but women as well. And she's known, again, to give very memorable speeches. And then when you look at the policies of the Democratic Party in general, you know, Obamacare, healthcare, and others, it was after Barack Obama that a lot of the Democratic policies started to be very progressive. And we see the Democrat Party right now moving in that direction, with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting prime time last night, with Bernie Sanders getting prime time tonight. You know, these are all issues, and they're significant.
Thanks, Susan, for getting us all your thoughts and getting us the details on, Obama's stance in the Democratic camp. Of course, everyone's waiting for his address on day 2 of the DNC. But stay with us, Susan. We'll be back with you for more updates on Antony Blinken's return from West Asia. We'll be back with you in a bit.
All right. Now, wrapping up his 9th West Asia visit since the Gaza war began, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that there was no time to waste in securing a ceasefire deal. Well,
the top U.S. diplomat also said that Washington does not support any long-term occupation of Gaza by Israel. Now, speaking to the media in Doha before flying back to Washington, Blinken warned that time is of the essence for a truce deal.
This needs to get done, and it needs to get done in the days ahead, and we will do everything possible to get it across the finish line.
Blinken reiterated that Israel has accepted a proposal by United States to bridge the gaps between the two sides for a deal and urged Hamas to follow suit. However, media reports quoted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as saying that his government would insist on keeping control of the Philadelphia corridor on the Gaza-Egypt border. And asked about Netanyahu's remarks, Blinken said that since the start of the conflict, it was made very clear that the United States does not accept any long-term occupation of Gaza.
Now, earlier on Tuesday, Blinken flew from Israel to Egypt for talks with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Blinken then travelled to Doha, where he met Qatari Minister Mohammed bin Abdulaziz bin Saleh Al Khulaifi. Mediators met last week with the Israeli negotiators in Doha, and more truce talks are expected in Egypt this week.
According to Palestinian officials, the war has killed over 40,000 people in Gaza. In the latest, Gaza health authorities claim at least 10 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school housing displaced Palestinians. Meanwhile, Israel's military said it had recovered the bodies of 6 hostages from southern Gaza.
Israel said that the bodies of the hostages were found 10 meters underground in a Gaza tunnel. Israeli protesters took to streets in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem demanding a hostage deal.
Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have said that there could be a long wait for Iranian retaliation against Israel over the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran.
All right, let's go back to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, Anthony Blinken has wrapped up his 9th visit to West Asia since the war began. But a ceasefire, that is still elusive, and Israeli occupation of Gaza, that remains a sticking point still. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, it appears that Israel agreed to this sort of transition and proposal put forth by the United States and Anthony Blinken, despite the fact that 2 of the provisions that Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, wanted wasn't in this deal. And one of them was what happens to Gaza after the ceasefire. He didn't want Hamas to have any sort of control over it. And he also wanted Israeli troops on the Gaza-Egypt border. Apparently that wasn't in there. That wasn't good enough for Hamas officials. They said that the proposal was not what they expected and they had discussed. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, Anthony Blinken is returning without a deal. He's saying time is running out. Next week, we are expecting U.S. envoy Brett McGurk to travel to the region to try to come up with some kind of resolution and solution. However, U.S. officials are telling Politico that time is running out. If they don't come up with a solution next week, then there are no avenues, at least for now, left to bring Israel and Hamas closer together for this ceasefire deal. And, you know, of course, this comes at a time when everyone is worried that there's going to be a wider war with Iran retaliating against Israel and whatnot. So, you know, even for domestic purposes, with the upcoming U.S. elections, the Biden administration hopes to get at least some deal through, but it just appears very elusive at this time.
Even before Anthony Blinken went for this 9th attempt for a ceasefire deal in the West Asian region, of course, you know, even then it was considered as little more than optics at that point. Of course, he's come back without anything in hand. Of course, we'll have to wait and watch what comes out. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan, and getting us all those updates. All right, from one war front to the other. Following Kiev's incursion into the Kursk region inside Russia, the Pentagon is trying to get a clear picture of Ukraine's longer-term objectives in the region.
Now, the recent surprise move by Ukraine is changing the trajectory of the war. It's boosting morale among Ukraine's war-weary population. However, the ultimate outcome of the incursion remains impossible to predict at this point, as Kiev's incursion into western Russia entered its 3rd week. According to Russian sources, Ukrainian forces have either destroyed or damaged all 3 of the bridges over the same river in western Russia.
And so that continues to be our focus. As it relates to their operation in Kursk, as I mentioned, they clearly have compelled the Russians to struggle in their response. It has certainly demonstrated the creativity and the battlefield prowess of the Ukrainians. But when it comes to what their longer-term objectives are here, that's something that we're still discussing with them.
On the other side, Russia has formed 3 new military groupings to bolster security in regions bordering Ukraine. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov held a meeting on issues of military security of border regions and the Ukrainian incursion into Russia.
We have launched a coordination council on military security issues in the border territories of Belgorod, Bryansk and Kursk regions. The work has already begun. Direct round-the-clock interaction has been established between the regional administrations, the commanders of the troop groups in 3 subsectors of the Russian Federation, and the responsible heads of the headquarters of the Ministry of Defense.
Russian Defense Ministry released a video it said showed the aftermath of a firefight in the Kursk region in which a number of Ukrainian military vehicles were destroyed by a unit of the Russian Marines.
In his first visit in nearly 13 years, Russian President Vladimir Putin made an unscheduled trip to Chechnya. Putin was greeted by Chechnya's self-styled strongman leader Ramzan Kadyrov. He then went on to visit a Special Forces academy bearing his own name and speaking with volunteer fighters who trained there prior to being deployed in Ukraine. Putin later held talks with Kadyrov at the Chechen leader's residence in Grozny.
Meanwhile, Russia hit energy infrastructure in northern Ukraine in an overnight missile and drone attack and caused a huge fire in the west of the country. Ukraine's Air Force commander said that its forces shot down 3 ballistic missiles and 25 of the 26 drones launched in the attack on 9 regions across the country. Regional governor said that a 14-year-old child died from his injuries in a hospital after a Russian munition struck Ukraine's southern Zaporizhzhia region. Furthermore, the Russian military said on Tuesday that its forces had taken control of what it described as the strategically important logistics hubs of New York in eastern Ukraine. And Afghanistan's Taliban morality government, known for morally policing the women, has now started to do the same with men. The ministry has dismissed more than 280 members of the security force for failing to grow a beard.
Well, it's not just that, and also they've been detained. They've detained more than 13,000 others in Afghanistan for immoral acts in the previous year. However, the Ministry for the Prevention of Vice and Propagation of Virtue said that during its annual operations update, around half of the detainees were set free after 24 hours, and no information regarding the alleged offences or gender of the detainees were revealed, citing data of the past year. Mohibullah Mukhlis, Director of Planning and Legislation at the ministry, told a press conference that officials had destroyed 21,328 musical instruments and prevented thousands of computer operators from selling immoral and unethical films in the market.
The Morality Ministry, which took over the disbanded Women's Ministry premises in Kabul after the Taliban came back to power in 2021, has been criticized by human rights organizations in the United Nations for restrictions on women and hampering the freedom of expression. According to the United Nations mission to Afghanistan, there were cases of Morality Ministry officials stopping and detaining women at times for a few hours for not abiding by their interpretation of the Islamic dress code. Taliban, calling the allegations baseless, has said that the rules apply to their interpretation of Islamic law and Afghan customs.
A week after World Health Organization declared Mpox a global public health emergency, the disease has been witnessing a surge in Central Africa,
where countries like Congo have become an epicenter of the outbreak. A lack of research funding and scarcity of vaccines, it's left many, including the children, exposed to the infectious disease. Take a look at our next report for more on this.
At a camp for those who fled violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, Justine Munguiko is soothing her crying baby. She's a woman who needs answers around Mpox.
The skin lesion disease comes from I don't know where. I can't even remember the name of the disease. We were told that it comes after eating game, but neither I nor my child have eaten game. These symptoms just appeared.
Munguiko's experience highlights one of the challenges as the international community looks to tackle the Mpox outbreak. getting the knowledge they need to protect themselves to those who need it most. Her son is one of approximately 27,000 cases of Mpox in Congo's current outbreak, which began in January 2023, causing an estimated 1,100 deaths, mainly among children. Last week, the World Health Organization declared Mpox a global public health emergency after the disease spread to neighboring countries and outside the continent. But it's communities like Mungwiko's that are most exposed and in need of support. The right information has to get to those immediately at risk, says Associate Fellow at Chatham House's Global Health Programme, Dr. Ebere Okereke.
Communicating with people about what they should do, what they should report and how they should report so we can understand what's going on quicker and contain it better is critical.
But it's not only those at the Kanyaruchinya camp near Goma suffering from a lack of knowledge. Helen Rees, co-chair of South Africa's Mpox Incident Management Team, says that over the past 50 years there has been a shameful lack of investment to help African researchers understand Mpox better.
We still globally do not have a good understanding of Mpox, on the outbreaks, how it spreads, how many asymptomatic cases do we have for every case that we find with symptoms. We do not have a good understanding.
Back at the camp, there are some efforts underway to inform. On Monday, residents gathered to hear a health worker from aid organisation MEDAIR explain how to avoid infection. We thought there was no medicine, said one attendee, clutching a leaflet. I'm glad to hear it's curable.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, lots more. We'll start off with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Poland. He's all set to leave for the nation, marking the first time an Indian Prime Minister will be visiting Poland in over 40 years.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan alleges that ex-ISI chief Faiz Hamid, been recently detained in connection with the housing scheme scam, is being coerced into turning a prover against him.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Back viewers, you're watching World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest, with Haim and I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines.
Second night of the Democratic National Convention underway in Chicago. Former President Barack Obama to throw his support behind Kamala Harris's White House bid. List of speakers includes former First Lady Michelle Obama.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken leaves Doha after meeting the mediators in ceasefire mission, says the U.S. is trying to send necessary messages to Iran to avoid escalation in West Asia.
Russian President Putin visits Chechnya for the first time since 2011, with Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov inspecting troops and volunteers ready to fight Ukraine.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to embark on his visit to Poland today. First Indian Prime Minister to visit the European country in the last 45 years. Slated to visit Ukraine next on the 23rd of August.
Kolkata police suspends 2 assistant police commissioners and a police inspector in connection with vandalism at Arjikar Medical College after rape and murder of a junior doctor. Department inquiry initiated against them.
Search continues for 6 people who went missing after super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily. British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and Morgan Stanley International Chairman Jonathan Bloomer among those missing.
Gold prices reach record highs as investors continue to flock to precious metal. Buying spree by central banks fueled this price surge as demand for safe haven assets grow.
World number 1 Yannick Sinner has been cleared of wrongdoing after twice testing positive for a banned substance in March. The Italian will lose ranking points and prize money from his semi-final run at Indian Wells, but will face no further sanctions. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be leaving for Poland at around 9:30 a.m. local time today.
And this visit will be a first pan-Indian Prime Minister in over 40 years. This year marks 70 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries as well.
During Prime Minister Modi's visit, talks will focus on defence, trade and cultural relations. Notably, Poland is the sixth largest economy in the European Union and is India's largest trading partner and investment partner in Central and Eastern Europe. Bilateral trade between India and Poland was around $5.7 billion in 2023-24.
Indian companies have invested heavily in some Polish IT, pharma and electronic companies, while around 30 companies from Poland already have their presence in segments like sanitary products, cosmetics and metals. Meanwhile, on the defence front, India recently posted a defence envoy at its embassy in Poland, with Polish defence companies looking to establish joint ventures.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaches Poland later today. This is the first visit of an Indian Prime Minister to Poland in last 40 years and focus will be on strategic partnership, trade, investment and of course people-to-people connect as well. Remember, Poland has been a major center of Indology in Europe. But the second leg of the visit will be Ukraine. The Indian Prime Minister travels to Kyiv and this will be his first visit since the war broke out. And since the country also became independent, that an Indian Prime Minister is traveling to Ukraine. India, of course, will be keen to support Ukraine in terms of its reconstruction efforts, but also in terms of how India can support by humanitarian supplies. But all in all, New Delhi's policy has been dialogue and diplomacy, and it will be re-emphasized during Prime Minister Modi's Kyiv visit. With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibal for WION in Warsaw, Poland.
Now, after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland, he will leave for Ukraine's capital Kiev, and that is scheduled for the 23rd of August. He will be travelling by train from Poland. Ahead of the Prime Minister's visit, Siddhant Sibal gave a walkthrough from one of the trains that is en route to Kiev. Take a look.
And inside were the compartments of Ukrainian railways, and the arts are being cheap right now. Essentially, this is the most easiest mode of transportation in Ukraine, and these railways are the lifeline of this country. Now, if we talk about the Ukrainian railways, not only they move people inside the country, but also bring people from outside. And remember, this is important at a time when the airspace of this country is closed because of the ongoing war. So essentially, one of the key and cheapest mode of transportation is the railway, but also private vehicles and the buses as well. But if we talk about the upcoming visit of the Indian Prime Minister, the focus will be on dialogue and diplomacy. Beyond India is traveling to Kyiv right now, and that of course will be a significant visit that the world will be closely watching, given the fact that it's the first time that an Indian Prime Minister will be in Ukraine, not only since the war but also since the country's independence. With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibal for WION on board Ukrainian railway going towards Kyiv.
Now, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has alleged that ex-ISI chief Faiz Hamid, who's been recently detained in connection with the housing scheme scam, is being coerced into turning a prover against him.
Well, according to Khan, the pressure is part of a broader plot to drag him into a military trial over the May 9th protests, where he could reportedly face charges as severe as mutiny, a charge that carries the weight of a death sentence or life imprisonment in Pakistan.
Faiz Hamid, who served as the head of the ISI from 2019 to 2021 during Khan's tenure as the Prime Minister, is no ordinary figure. Hamid was once one of the most powerful figures in Pakistan, someone who wielded immense influence behind the scenes.
As per experts, his influence extended far beyond the typical duties of an intelligence officer, playing a pivotal role in the power struggles that have shaped Pakistan's recent history. Now, according to reports, Khan's fears that Hamid under pressure might provide testimony that could severely damage him, and Hamid was arrested last week formally by the Pakistani military on what the military says was a violation of the Pakistan Army Act.
WION sources reveal that Hamid's trial in the military jail it's begun, and a conclusion of the trial can be expected anywhere within 6 weeks to 6 months' time. Khan and former Chief of the Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, have said it on multiple occasions that all the dirty work of Imran Khan government was being carried out by the ISI led by Faiz Hamid.
This varied from managing and threatening the media to attempting to coerce the judiciary to getting parliamentarians on one page and to pass certain legislations. Now, experts say that in Khan's eyes, the arrest of Hamid last week is not just another case of a former official being brought to justice. It's a strategic move aimed at dismantling the remnants of Imran Khan's political influence. Khan has also called for a judicial probe into the May 9th violence, stating that culprits for the violence can be found on CCTV footage, further asserting that if he were truly behind the riots, he would not be so eager for an investigation.
Khan's also repeated allegations against former Army Chief Qamar Javed Bajwa, accusing him of betraying him. Khan said that the transfer of Faiz Hamid from the ISI was part of a larger deal between Bajwa and Nawaz Sharif, the leader of the PMLN. Sharif has been a long-time adversary of Khan. It seems Khan is running out of options.
Shifting focus to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is gearing up for the first election since the economic meltdown also triggered a political crisis in the country.
While the island nation is limping back, it is still in the midst of its debt restructuring. After facing protests, political upheaval, the pandemic, rising prices, voters will head out to choose their next leader on September 21st. Well, before we bring you the latest on that, let's just cut across to the Democratic National Convention. We're getting reports that Michelle Obama is currently speaking. Let's just listen to this.
It's the contagious power of hope. The anticipation, the energy, the exhilaration of once again being today. The chance to vanquish the demons of fear, division, and hate that have consumed us and continue pursuing the unfinished promise of this great nation, the dream that our parents and grandparents fought and died and sacrificed for. America, hope is making a comeback. To be honest, I am realizing that until recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings, is that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future. And for me, that mourning has also been mixed with my own personal grief. The last time I was here in my hometown was to memorialize my mother, the woman who showed me the meaning of hard work and humility and decency, the woman who set my moral compass high and showed me the power of my own voice. Folks, I still feel her loss so profoundly. I wasn't even sure if I'd be steady enough to stand before you tonight, but my heart compelled me to be here because of the sense of duty that I feel to honor her memory and to remind us all not to squander the sacrifices our elders made to give us a better future. You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning. So my mother volunteered at the local school. She always looked out for the other kids on the block. She was glad to do the thankless, unglamorous work that for generations has strengthened the fabric of this nation. The belief that if you do unto others, if you love thy neighbor, if you work and scrape and sacrifice, it will pay off. If not for you, then maybe for your children or your grandchildren. You see, those values have been passed on through family farms and factory towns, through tree-lined streets and crowded tenements, through prayer groups and National Guard units and social studies classrooms. Those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values. Even though our mothers grew up an ocean apart, they shared the same belief in the promise of this country. That's why her mother moved here from India at 19. It's why she taught Kamala about justice, about the obligation to lift others up, about our responsibility to give more than we take. She'd often tell her daughter, "Don't sit around and complain about things, do something." So, with that voice in her head, Kamala went out and she worked hard in school, graduating from an HBCU, earning her law degree at a state school. And then she went on to work for the people, fighting to hold lawbreakers accountable, strengthening the rule of law, fighting to get folks better wages, cheaper prescription drugs, a good education, decent health care, child care, elder care. From a middle-class household, Kamala worked her way up to become Vice President of the United States of America. My girl, Kamala Harris, is more than ready for this moment. She is one of the most qualified people ever to seek the office of the presidency. And she is one of the most dignified. A tribute to her mother, to my mother, and to your mother too. The embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. Her story is your story. It's my story. It's the story of the vast majority of Americans trying to build a better life. Look, Kamala knows, like we do, that regardless of where you come from, what you look like, who you love, how you worship, or what's in your bank account, we all deserve the opportunity to build a decent life. All of our contributions deserve to be accepted and valued. Because no one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American. No one. Kamala has shown her allegiance to this nation, not by spewing anger and bitterness, but by living a life of service and always pushing the doors of opportunity open to others. She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. we will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No. We put our heads down. We get to work. In America, we do something. And throughout her entire life, that's what we've seen from Kamala Harris. The steel of her spine, the steadiness of her upbringing, the honesty of her example, and yes, the joy of her laughter and her light. It couldn't be more obvious. Of the two major candidates in this race, only Kamala Harris truly understands the unseen labor and unwavering commitment that has always made America great. Now, unfortunately, we know what comes next. We know folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Wait. I want to know. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs? Look, it's his same old con. His same old con, doubling down on ugly, misogynistic, racist lies as a substitute for real ideas and solutions that will actually make people's lives better. Look, because cutting our health care, taking away our freedom to control our bodies, the freedom to become a mother through IVF like I did, those things are not going to improve the health outcomes of our wives, mothers, and daughters. Shutting down the Department of Education, banning our books, none of that will prepare our kids for the future. Demonizing our children for being who they are and loving who they love, look, that doesn't make anybody's life better. Instead, it only makes us small. And let me tell you this, going small is never the answer. Going small is the opposite of what we teach our kids. Going small is petty, it's unhealthy, and quite frankly, it's unpresidential. So, why would any of us accept this from anyone seeking our highest office? Why would we normalize that type of backward leadership? Doing so only demeans and cheapens our politics. It only serves to further discourage good, big-hearted people from wanting to get involved at all. America, Our parents taught us better than that, and we deserve so much better than that. That's why we must do everything in our power to elect two of those good, big-hearted people. There is no other choice than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. No other choice. But as we embrace this renewed sense of hope, let us not forget the despair we have felt. Let us not forget what we are up against. Yes, Kamala and Tim are doing great now. We're loving it. They're packing arenas across the country. Folks are energized. We are feeling good. But remember, there are still so many people who are desperate for a different outcome, who are ready to question and criticize every move Kamala makes, who are eager to spread those lies, who don't want to vote for a woman, who will continue to prioritize building their wealth over ensuring that everyone has enough. So no matter how good we feel tonight or tomorrow or the next day, this is going to be an uphill battle. So folks, we cannot be our own worst enemies. No. See, because the minute something goes wrong, the minute a lie takes hold, folks, we cannot start wringing our hands. We cannot get a Goldilocks complex about whether everything is just right. And we cannot indulge our anxieties about whether this country will elect someone like Kamala instead of doing everything we can to get someone like Kamala elected. Kamala and Tim, they have lived amazing lives. And I am confident that they will lead with compassion, inclusion, and grace. But they are still only human. They are not perfect. And like all of us, they will make mistakes. But luckily, y'all, this is not just on them. This is up to us, all of us, to be the solution that we seek. It's up to all of us to be the antidote to the darkness and division. Look, I don't care how you identify politically, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or none of the above. This is our time to stand up for what we know in our hearts is right. To stand up, not just for our basic freedoms, but for decency and humanity, for basic respect, dignity, and empathy, for the values at the very foundation of this democracy. It's up to us to remember what Kamala's mother told her. Don't just sit around and complain, do something. So if they lie about her, and they will, we've got to do something. If we see a bad poll, and we will, we got to put down that phone and do something. If we start feeling tired, if we start feeling that dread creeping back in, we got to pick ourselves up, throw water on our face, and what? We only have 2.5 months, y'all, to get this done. Only 11 weeks to make sure every single person we know is registered and has a voting plan. So we cannot afford for anyone America to sit on their hands and wait to be called. Don't complain if no one from the campaign has specifically reached out to you to ask you for your support. There is simply no time for that kind of foolishness. You know what you need to do. So, to be your official ask. Michelle Obama is asking you, no, I'm telling y'all to do something. Because you all, this election is going to be close. In some states, just a handful, listen to me, a handful of votes in every precinct could decide the winner. So we need to vote in numbers that erase any doubt. We need to overwhelm any effort to suppress us. Our fate is in our hands. In 77 days, we have the power to turn our country away from the fear, division, and smallness of the past. We have the power to marry our hope with our action. We have the power to pay forward the love, sweat, and sacrifice of our mothers and fathers and all those who came before us. We did it before, y'all, and we sure can do it again. Let us work like our lives depend on it. And let us keep moving our country forward and go higher, yes, always higher than we've ever gone before as we elect the next president and vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Thank you all. God bless. One more job tonight. Yeah, one more job. You all, thank you for all the love, but it is now my honor to introduce somebody who knows a whole lot about hope. Someone who has spent his life strengthening our democracy, and let me tell you, as someone who lives with him, he wakes up every day, and thinks about what's best for this country. Please welcome America's 44th president and the love of my life, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That's enough. Thank you. Chicago, it's good to be home. It is good to be home, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling fired up. I am feeling ready to go. Even if I am the only person stupid enough to speak after Michelle Obama. I am feeling hopeful because this convention has always been pretty good to kids with funny names who believe in a country where anything is possible. Because we have a chance to elect someone who has spent her entire life trying to give people the same chances America gets.